At that time, there was a team struggling hard against very dangerous squirrels. The information in front of them confused them and made it difficult to survive the battle. Anyone who saw this would think it was a game, but no, this was their new reality. To understand what was happening, let's go back a bit in time. The main character, Shiro, didn't know when he was brought to this world. After wandering around, he realized this was the world of Akiba. Many others were also brought here, and this was the game world they once played. The status screen was still functioning well, but some features were not. He saw the friend list was still active and noticed many friends were also brought here. He found his friend Sugu's name and immediately called him. They both agreed to meet under a big tree. This was the first time they saw each other's real faces, and Sugu always called Shiro Black Glasses because his appearance looked dangerous. It had been quite a while since they last entered the game, and they didn't understand how this could happen. Today was supposed to be the day the developer released a new update. They couldn't remember what happened before installing the update, and upon realizing it, they were already here. It felt so real that this wasn't a dream. It seemed, for now, they needed to adapt and gather information because they couldn't return to the real world yet. Shiro noticed that everything here still resembled the game they used to play, so they shouldn't venture out as there might be many monsters out there. The two of them then talked about various things that men usually discuss. Suddenly, Shiro stumbled. He explained that in real life he was shorter than here, making it a bit difficult to move. Shiro then accidentally met an old friend from their team, Akatsuki, a ninja assassin. When they met, Akatsuki asked for a bottle of potion to change her appearance from Shiro because she was a woman and wanted to change her appearance. Shiro had always thought Akatsuki played as an assassin, so he remained silent. However, it turned out Akatsuki was a woman. After drinking the potion given by Shiro, Akatsuki began to transform and became a woman matching her real gender. That night, Sugu asked why Akatsuki hadn't created a female character from the start, and she replied that since it was a game, she felt free. But now, because this had become a reality, she had to change it to feel more comfortable. Akatsuki felt indebted to Shiro, so she wanted Shiro to set conditions to repay her debt. Shiro didn't want to accept, but Akatsuki didn't like receiving help from others without repaying it. Sugu kept making lewd comments, so he received a few punches from Akatsuki. Finally, Sugu decided to invite Akatsuki to join their team as a form of repayment. Seeing that Shiro didn't mind, Akatsuki decided to follow Shiro as a sign of her devotion. The next morning, they all went to the market to look for food. They saw that this place seemed busier with NPCs than before. The food looked delicious, but when eaten, it tasted bland and all the food tasted the same like wet biscuits. The orange juice tasted like plain water. Suddenly, someone named Marie called out to Shiro. Shiro led his team to the Crescent Moon Alliance territory. There, he reunited with Marie, his very kind sister. Seeing Shiro, Marie immediately hugged him tightly. Shiro's team members also felt this warmth. Shortly after, Henry, who looked more serious than Marie, also arrived. However, he too succumbed to Akatsuki's sweet charm. The reason they came was to share information. They had gathered some basic information about this place. First, most teleportation portals were unusable, and the situation of being stuck in the game was happening across servers in all regions. Most guild members had gathered and were actively recruiting new members. After the update, the game was also different from the one they used to play. Marie wanted to invite Shiro to her guild, but he declined and returned with his two friends. Marie told her team that Shiro used to be the tactical advisor of a big team, but that team never formed a guild despite often participating in special guild events. Now, that team had disbanded. Shiro was currently wondering what would happen if they died here. In the game, if they died, they would return to the temple, but now no one dared to try it. That night, Shiro took his two friends to fight monsters because they had reached the highest level, so they still had confidence. However, when facing a group of squirrels, they were still not skilled in fighting because they were used to using commands on the status screen. But Akatsuki fought very agilely, so Shiro understood and told Sugu to fight with actions, not using commands. Now, Shiro understood this world better. Once a famous game worldwide brought hundreds of thousands of its players directly into the game, this event became known as the Great Disaster. The next morning, someone who died fighting monsters was revived at the temple, so it seemed in this world, death was not the end. Shiro's team was now more accustomed to the battle mechanisms in this world. But being accustomed was not enough, they needed to train more to become more proficient. That night, Akatsuki asked for permission to leave early because she wanted to practice some typical ninja techniques, such as seeing in the dark and moving silently. This forest was very suitable for practicing those skills. Shiro decided to use light magic so they could see the path and help Akatsuki find their location more easily. The reason their team had to practice fighting skills was because, in this area, large guilds were expanding their power and oppressing smaller guilds. In the city, battles couldn't be fought because the guards would intervene, so players farming levels individually or in small groups often became targets of attacks from large guilds to rob money and equipment. Of course, such players were despised by all other players. While walking and thinking, Sugu told Shiro to relax because Shiro looked tense. Shortly after, they reunited with Akatsuki. She reported that there were no monsters ahead, but as they approached a hospital, Shiro saw someone moving quickly. Sugu was immediately hit by leg binding magic, but Shiro promptly freed him. Shiro saw there were 4 people in front of them, and they seemed to be players robbing other players. They told Shiro to leave his belongings and go. Shiro would leave his belongings only if he was weaker than them, but not in this situation. Shiro then placed Sugu in front to withstand the attack. A female assassin tried to attack Shiro but was immediately bound. They saw Shiro as the main target that needed to be eliminated, so they switched to Shiro. However, Sugu used provocation magic to force them to attack him. They planned to eliminate Sugu with a combined attack, but Shiro used magic to bind them back. This magic didn't cause much damage, but Shiro also used another spell to reduce their defense and enhance Sugu's attack. If Sugu broke all the bindings, they would surely lose. They called for the healer's help, but their healer had been put to sleep by Shiro from the start. A female assassin tried to attack Shiro again, but this opened a gap for Sugu to strike. The group leader called 2 mages from the back to attack, but they had already been taken down by Akatsuki without showing her face. Shiro realized there were people behind them because Sugu was hit by magic initially, but the 4 visible people didn't include a mage. The small spell Shiro cast was just to distract them. In the battle, their leader was left behind and begged for mercy, but he attempted to betray them, so Akatsuki gave him a single strike that killed him instantly. Sugu didn't understand why this group had to fight so senselessly. Perhaps they had nothing else to do in this game. Honestly, Shiro also didn't know what to do now. Food tasted bland, their levels were capped, and most peaceful people stayed in the city living lazy days. Even Shiro didn't know what to do now. Upon returning to the guild, Marie told him that her members were attacked by other players and were being helped by a kind person. Marie needed to go pick them up, so she would take 6 people and ask Shiro to take care of the guild in the meantime. But Shiro knew the trip would take nearly a month, and if Marie's group left, they wouldn't be able to fend off other evil players. Shiro hesitated to help Marie because he knew it would be awkward, but in the end, he decided his group would go to pick up the person for her. The next day, Shiro's group officially set off. They used a whistle to summon horses, and after a short journey, Shiro took out a map. After reorganizing, Sugu told Shiro he didn't need to feel awkward because this was something they needed to do in this world. Shiro and Sugu then used another whistle to summon large hawks, items only possessed by those who had been in Shiro's large team. They then rode the hawks, and Akatsuki experienced the impressive sensation of flying high for the first time. After a 3-day journey, Shiro's group arrived at the labyrinth on a mission to pick up a girl. The reason they couldn't keep using the hawks was that they could only ride them for 4 hours a day, but those 4 hours were equivalent to 2 weeks of travel by horse. They stopped at a mountain to go through the labyrinth because dragons outside would attack them if they flew. Traveling on the ground wasn't safe either, so they chose this underground labyrinth. This place was old and had rat monsters of low level who knew not to attack them. However, if cornered, they would fight back. Seeing the path ahead overrun by rats, the group chose another route to avoid battles as much as possible. During a break, Akatsuki scouted the next floor and reported to Shiro. Sugu remained frustrated with the bland food. They couldn't change the taste even when cooked by a chef, but the spices in this world had a distinctive flavor they could sprinkle on the food to make it less bland. Suddenly, Marie contacted them, surprised that they had come this far. The girl they were looking for could already communicate with Marie, and Marie said the girl was hiding with the person who saved her. The girl they were looking for was Sira, who was currently in a city working at her rescuer's house, a cat person named Nyanta. The city was full of evil players who liked to bully NPCs. Sira would soon leave that place because Shiro's group was expected to arrive in a few days. Shiro didn't tell Marie about the hawks, and Marie fully trusted Shiro. However, she was curious why Shiro hadn't joined any guild. Marie then attended a guild leader meeting, where only 60% were present because the rest refused to return. Shiro's group reached a nearly collapsed bridge. Shiro pushed Akatsuki to avoid falling, but he fell himself. He dreamed of the early days of playing the game when he was completely alone and figuring everything out by himself. His knowledge made him known to many who asked for help. Although sometimes feels annoyed, he eventually found the team he needed, including Sugu. Shiro regained consciousness and found himself saved by Akatsuki and Sugu. They continued their journey, and Akatsuki commented on Shiro's map skills. Shiro explained that he was a college graduate programmer, surprising Akatsuki since they were the same age. They encountered a large monster as part of a new update. Despite its size, it was mid-level, so they could handle it. Sugu started with provocation, Akatsuki attacked from behind, and Shiro used magic to weaken the boss and strengthen Akatsuki's attacks. They defeated the boss and found the exit. Seeing the sunset made Shiro realize this was the new thing he was looking for. It was their first trophy since playing this game. Meanwhile, a group of evil players was robbing NPCs. Their leader ordered them to find Sira and Nayanta immediately. Shiro's group finally arrived in the city where Sira was hiding. They heard about the evil guild and needed to enter the city to pick up Sira because if Sira went out, she would likely be found and it could be dangerous. Akatsuki sneaked in first, while Shiro and Sugu entered the city. They were soon spotted by the leader and his men, but they didn't act immediately. Shiro reached the meeting point and met Sira, surprised that Nayanta was his former team captain. They trusted each other, believing the plan would succeed. Sira asked if Nayanta would join, and he agreed because he had no reason to stay. Knowing Sugu was also joining made Nayanta more assured. They left boldly, knowing it was dangerous. As long as they were in the city, they couldn't be attacked, but they still escorted Sira out of the city. The leader and his men waited outside. Shiro asked if Nayanta could handle the leader alone, and he was confident. Shiro challenged the strongest to speak, and Nayanta taunted the leader, who eventually accepted the challenge. The leader had a warrior-class character using fast attacks with short cooldowns to give the opponent no time to counter. Although Nayanta had less health, his speed and composure remained undisturbed because his class character used two swords and could continuously apply negative effects to the opponent. The leader soon found himself at a disadvantage, cheating by calling his friends to heal him. They then planned to gang up on Nayanta, but Sugu suddenly appeared and provoked them all. However, Sugu soon ran out of health due to their attacks. Then, Shiro asked Sira to use her healing ability on Sugu and Nayanta, focusing mainly on Nayanta. Nayanta was then kicked, and Sugu had to use a skill that made him invulnerable to all damage for 10 seconds, which could only be used every 10 minutes. The enemies thought Sugu was done, so he used his trump card. But when Sugu ran out of energy, Nayanta jumped towards Shiro. As he dodged, Shiro's attack bound the enemy leader, and Nayanta only needed to break the thorns to reduce the leader's health to 1. Akatsuki had already finished the enemies and mages at the back, not understanding why the leader's health evaporated so quickly. She suspected Shiro had used his attack twice, with a 15-second cooldown that coincided with the enemy leader's cooldown time. They understood each other so well that they could work together this effectively. Shiro gave the enemy leader a chance to retreat, leaving 1 health point as a sign, but he remained stubborn. Sira then gave a strike that made him flee. The enemy leader swore revenge on Shiro. The three then called the giant hawks and left immediately. Akatsuki felt a bit sad because she couldn't coordinate as well as Shiro's group. Shiro told them more about NPCs, who were previously just programmed characters but have developed human-like personalities since the Great Disaster. On the way home, Sira informed Marie that they managed to escape and were on their way back. Feeling safe now, Sira cried and thanked everyone. Since it was already night, they decided to set up tents and rest. As Shiro's group set up tents, Sira and Nayanta went to gather wood. Nayanta encountered a deer and decided to showcase his skills. That night, when everyone complained about the food, Sugu smelled meat. They found Nayanta grilling meat. Initially, they thought it was bland, but it turned out to be the first time they tasted delicious food in this world. Shiro's group ate heartily and asked for seconds. Sira saw Nayanta as a mother bird feeding her chicks. Nayanta taught them the proper way to cook. Previously, they only took ingredients and cooked through the status screen, but now they had to cook directly to make it taste good. Shiro's group had tried before, but the ingredients turned black. Nayanta thought they hadn't learned enough as cooks. Shiro felt there was still much to learn. Akatsuki then introduced herself to Nayanta and Sira. Sira felt guilty for being weak and relying too much on Shiro's group. Sira asked about the relationship between Shiro and Nayanta. They admitted they were once in a group called the Tea Party of Adventurers. They didn't have much in common but enjoyed doing difficult missions together. Akatsuki felt less capable of working well together like Shiro and his old friends. They then realized that Sira seemed to like mature men like Nayanta. They guessed Sira was about the age of a middle school student. Shiro and Sugu remembered that their group also had a pair of twins of that age who often followed Shiro to ask about the game. Shiro used the temporary level down mechanism to play with them. He saw their names still on the list and was sure they might be confused and scared. Shiro saw they were in a guild and hoped they were okay. The next day, their group got caught in the rain and sought shelter in a nearby village. Nayanta noticed that Shiro still hadn't joined a guild. Nayanta had once joined a guild of cat characters who liked to bask in the sun. However, the guild disbanded because of a storm. They found a house, and the village chief welcomed them, sheltering them. Sugu felt happy with the soft straw, while Nayanta and Sira looked for a fireplace to cook. The village chief's 2 grandchildren were excited to see Akatsuki, a ninja. They heard stories that this village was once hit by a snowstorm, losing their father and a sick mother in the mountains. Sugu realized NPCs were now like humans. Players were the most different because they could come back to life. Previously, they hadn't realized the significance of NPCs. Sira and Nayanta returned with food ingredients, and they made a cake that the NPCs had never tried before. Meanwhile, a group of adventurers returned from a mostly failed mission with many casualties back to the temple. They were angry at the overly strong leader who only attracted powerful monsters without a clear strategy. This group was where the twins had joined, feeling exploited by the stronger members. The younger twin missed Shiro dearly, hearing his voice but not daring to approach. Shiro explained that guilds offered many benefits like shared storage, private communication, and guild houses. After returning, Nianta taught cooking to Marie's group and celebrated Sira's return. Henry told Marie to keep the cooking secret at Shiro's request. That night, while everyone slept, Shiro and Marie talked. Marie thanked Shiro for all his help. Shiro asked if there had been any problems while he was away. Marie explained there hadn't been many robberies and everything was safe, but the atmosphere was tenser due to competition. Marie's guild had less than 30 members, with some at the highest levels, while the largest guild had over 15 members, mostly at the highest levels. The competition led to strong guilds dominating hunting areas, even though there were rules against fighting while hunting. Shiro felt this situation created a significant barrier between players. However, they couldn't impose rules or moral standards on everyone. He had gathered many small guilds to share ways to overcome these barriers, but each guild had different opinions and no one was willing to compromise, so no agreement was reached. Additionally, some guilds targeted the new level cap in the latest update, but for high-level players to gain experience, they also had to fight high-level monsters. As a result, they used a trick with experience bottles. Experience bottles allowed users to get certain buffs and double the experience gained within a certain time, but the bottles were only given free daily to players below level 30. So, a guild would accept players below level 30 and take their experience bottles to resell to the large guilds that needed them. Shiro then went for a walk to think. He didn't know what to do in this situation. An old colleague suggested he try to solve this problem, but he didn't know what to do since he had never joined a guild before. He didn't like joining guilds because they were only interested in his veteran status. Suddenly, Nianta came and saw that he was still dissatisfied with joining a guild. He knew that the reasons he thought of only proved he was arrogant, but he couldn't deny that the guild mechanism changed people. However, nothing remained unchanged in this world. Denying that reality was like denying his existence. Their previous team was also formed by the joint efforts of everyone, so treasures should be something earned together. Hearing the captain's explanation, he understood that everyone had long been by his side, waiting for him to change his view on guilds. He then contacted his twin sister, Minori. He knew her current situation, so he wanted her to confirm. Minori was very moved when she met Shiro again. He promised he would come soon to save the twins, so she should stay calm. The next day, he met Sugu and Akatsuki again and decided to ask for their help. He then returned to Marie's guild to ask for their help in rescuing the twins. Their guild still owed him, so they would help and also drive out the guilds that took experience bottles from new players. He decided to clean up this city because it was now run in a very petty and dirty way. It used to be the largest city on the server, but now it was very weak. They wanted to know his plan so they could help. First, he needed 5 million gold coins. Hearing that, everyone was shocked. However, what he needed most of all was everyone's goodwill. The more people supported him, the greater the chance of success. So, he asked for their help once again because he had now formed his guild called Log Horizon. Regarding the currency in this world, a simple meal only cost 5 gold coins, staying at an inn was 10 coins, and it took 35 coins for daily living. Just killing 6 goblins was enough. Therefore, the 5 million gold coins Shiro needed was enormous. Marie's guild had at most 60,000 gold coins, but he had a special plan for that money. However, they also had ways to make money. Marie's guild members and Sugu were currently capturing wild boars alive because killing them only yielded 2 kilograms of meat, but capturing them alive for processing would yield more. Nianta had trained more cooks for Marie's guild, while Marie hadn't left her room for 3 days due to a pile of documents. Henry kept adding documents, and Shiro also brought more for her to work on. Henry saw Shiro was very determined in the upcoming plan because he liked being with Akatsuki. So, just by using Akatsuki as bait, Henry would work. Akatsuki was monitoring the experienced bottle sellers and suddenly felt a chill. Sugu and 2 young men had just brought back some wild animals, and Marie thanked them. However, the amount was still insufficient, so they went back to hunting. That night, Marie saw a pile of leftover documents and screamed. She was now completely afraid of people with glasses because they were all dangerous. Based on Henry's memory, we know he used to be an accountant in the real world, so Shiro asked him to help create a new mechanism for generating money because hunting monsters here wasn't enough. When he realized there was another way, Henry said that the target of 5 million gold coins might be achievable. Sugu then brought a cake for Marie, who kept complaining about her job. He thanked Marie for supporting Shiro's plan and said that the plan would start the next day. The following day, Marie and the girls opened a food shop to attract players to come and eat. They thought the food would taste bland like everything else, and even though it smelled good, they didn't expect much. However, after tasting it, They were moved because they could once again experience the taste of the real world here. The news began to spread throughout the city. Many people came to buy food, and production couldn't keep up with demand. Everyone was busy, and the news spread by word of mouth, with more and more people finding out. After a few days, they had collected more than 40,000 gold coins. However, at this rate, to reach 5 million gold coins, they would need 8 months, which wouldn't be enough to carry out the plan. If they had enough labor, they could serve up to 10,000 people a day, but their current labor force was only sufficient for 1,000 people. However, money was not the core of the plan this time.